Like, wow, feels like a summer day. If we set up these masterful nests, we put a lot of protein into them. I've fed about, on average, 4 pounds. Some of the early ones I got started feeding 5 pounds. So these hives have seen a lot of protein. We started feeding that first week of August. And those totes, and if Carrie gets around the rest of the yards, I have 40 yards, there's 7 in here. But if she gets around the rest of the yards today with a tote and everything, then that finishes up. That's practically, that'll be 50,000 liters I've put into my hives since the nectar shut off August 1st. So that's a lot of feed. So probably a half a tanker load more than I typically would put into my colonies. But I didn't really have a choice. Nectar flow is shut down. I got to keep the feed to them. It's kind of like a management choice of mine. I could have kept the feed on them. I know a lot of beekeepers kept the feed or kept the honey on them until later on into summer and then started extracting so they wouldn't have to be as prompt with the feed. But my boxes are full of canola honey and my summer staff leaves for school end of August, so I had to carry through and keep things moving to make the most efficient use of my labor resource. And even at the end, as we're pulling out the honey, there's still some granulation starting. So I mean, that honey whips my day, so I didn't really have a choice. And that meant we had to start feeding. And actually, there's still pollen coming in, a little bit of pollen. We had lots of protein on, flashing syrup at them. So it actually was like I'm a master chef. I'm just making this masterful brood nest. And it actually translated very well. Great big clusters of bees, emerging end of August, well into September. So they're all set up. They're ready to go. Fat and happy. And the last thing I want them to do is start brood rearing and start extracting those proteins and those fats from the bodies of themselves, because I got them set up. I don't want them to waste it on little patches of brood going on right about now. I want them to do that later on in winter. So this weather, I complain about the cold when it's cold in the fall, and then I complain when it's too hot. So I'm never happy, right? But I'd just be as happy if it just kind of cooled down to normal. Like we haven't had a frost yet, kind of give us some freezing temperatures. Shut the landscape down, kind of drift cool, and no snow until middle November, but just allow a nice gradual ending of the year so I can get these hives inside and keep everything nice and tight and cozy, and none of this unusual type of conditions. So I'm also thinking, by feeding them that extra tote, if there is space freed up and that queen gets the harebrained idea to start brood rearing in those bees, they think, oh, look at the eggs, let's take them. And it just, shuts them down with syrup so they don't have a place to cause any trouble. Then I go to the other side of my apiary and I'm pulling full pails off my colonies because I have hundreds on hundreds of acres of regrowth canola. It is quite something. Farmers aren't putting it under. You can hear the bee activity. These flowers are absolutely plugging my brood chambers. I have hundreds of acres of this around my yards, pulling full pails of syrup up off my colonies. And I'm going to move those pails to the other side of the apiary where there's no flowers whatsoever. It's very interesting, different farming practices done by different farmers. Like, this is a large scale farmer. I think what he's doing, I'm not exactly sure, But all this growth is trapping nutrients. And by trapping the nutrients up in the growth, you'll put it under as green manure and it'll preserve it until the plant decomposes, where the nutrients will be released later on in the spring. Contributing to my winter nest, I don't know if I want this honey in my winter feed, but it's mixed off with syrup anyways, so it should be all right. A lot of pollen coming in. Isn't that something? This is one strange year. Got more flower growth on this field now than it did all July.